So welcome again, everyone, to the Canadian Media Matters panel. My name's Sabrina Maddow, and I'm a columnist with the National Post. I'll be leading today's discussion. And at the end, we will have an audience Q&A. So if you'd like, you can submit questions through the event landing page. You'll see a questions tab right at the upper left corner. And we'd really love this to be an interactive conversation, so please do that. Today's discussion will also be recorded and shared with registered guests after the fact. And again, your input matters to us. So watch your inbox for a Canadian Media Matters survey and the chance to win $500. And with that, I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Shannon Lewis, who is the president of the Canadian Media Directors Council. And she has such an impressive bio that I'm going to have to read it now.
Please don't.
The CMDC operates to ensure a fair and progressive media marketplace, with members accounting for 96% of the total media investment and over $10 billion invested in the Canadian economy, jobs, and communications infrastructure. Now, Shannon was instrumental as well in launching an industry-wide initiative called the Canadian Media Manifesto, with the mission to sustainably grow the Canadian media ecosystem in a way that further supports the Canadian economy, fosters responsibility, and trusted journalism. Welcome, Shannon. I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you. Well said. Thank you, Sabrina. I am Shannon Lewis. I'm the president of the CMDC, which is the Canadian Media Directors Council. And today I'm here to highlight the profound significance of local news within our society, businesses, and a healthy Canadian media ecosystem. As leaders, we are gathered here today, and it is essential for us to all recognize and embrace the pivotal role that we all play as media agencies, and also individually as leaders in the industry. The challenges facing local media and journalism are definitely evident, and I'll show you some facts that are quite alarming. From the decline of advertising revenue to the rise of fake news, the need for reliable, trustworthy journalism and brand-safe environments has never been more critical. So I want you all to imagine, and even write it down. Write down a few words. Imagine what would the world look like without news. Just write a few words and reflect. Well, it may seem unimaginable, but I'm sorry to say we're actually not that far off. Information would be scarce, leaving us in the dark about important events that are surrounding us. Democracy would definitely face significant challenges. Transparency and accountability would definitely fade away. Now, however, news, as we know, local news is not just about information. It also serves as a powerful catalyst for social change. Throughout investigative journalism and impactful storytelling, journalists really bring to light the social issues and also explore and expose injustices in our society. So I'm going to give you a few examples that are fantastic stories that actually won some awards. Toronto Star, and Michael Beckerman will be speaking later, but there's a fantastic piece that's called Uncharted, and it's really, it was pretty deep into uncovering the police forces that are across our country. They're actually violating human rights. And Michael, I remember this conversation. I'm looking at Michael right now that we had about it. It's pretty powerful and compelling. And this kind of journalism basically holds institutions accountable, and it drives necessary positive change in our society. Now, I can't forget the brilliant journalist that's with us today, Sabrina. I was reviewing all your headlines, and I have to say, you are bringing the issues of today to the forefront. So the one from yesterday was about affordable housing. I'd love to actually have a private conversation with you about this, but it's a great piece. It's again, holding the government accountable, because for first-time buyers, which I'm sure a lot of your children are first-time buyers in the group on the call, there are ongoing challenges that we just cannot get through. And supporting journalism like Sabrina's piece also prompts important conversations that we're having in society. So these are just examples of how it's so important to invest in local journalism and also the necessity of local news. So unfortunately, we don't have a chat, but keep those three words that you described. What is unimaginable? And please, if you could send it to me, I'd love to know, because I love research. So it's Shannon at CMDC. Send me what that world to you would look like. Now, in the absence of news, obviously this is if there was no local news, this would be dramatically impactful to business. So you think of the morning, it would hinder the market insights, trends, innovations, consumer behavior data, making it difficult to actually make informed decisions and also stay highly competitive. Now, additionally, we as marketers would face challenges actually connecting with diverse audiences and also leveraging data and insights for effective advertising. Today is important. Today reminds us of the importance of fact, the importance of truth, and also the importance of responsible media. In a world where algorithms, as we know, can amplify false content, it leads to widespread reach, and also becomes crucial for media marketing leaders to invest in more trusted sources to support Canadian journalism. And I'm actually going to take you through a few really interesting stats on algorithms in a second. So the crisis of local news is really a harsh reality. Here are the stats. I think the stats speak for themselves. But since March 2020, we actually did some great research. Sarah, who's going to be joining us later from Dentsu, did some amazing local research, and she's part of our task force. But we've really witnessed a decline of investment in local news, which is unfortunate because obviously there's an emergence of local news deserts, which is really saddening. So take, for example, Michael also, who's going to be joining us. Bidoff did a fantastic speech. So Jordan Bidoff a few weeks ago for the Canadian Club. And this is the one that really stuck with me. And I reached out to Michael. I'm like, I need that stat today because it's something that I think about a lot. So the Ottawa Citizen, which covers, you know, what's going on in Ottawa on the Hill and the government, was once a bustling newsroom of over hundreds of employees. Today, that newsroom is only 25 individuals. That to me is just shocking. And at our media leaders dinner, we actually met one of the political journalists. Oh my gosh, name just escaped me, but he was fantastic. He was great because he's a young up and coming journalist, and he really showed us the power of responsible media and also holding the powerful accountable. So the decline of local news outlets is deeply concerning to me as a leader in the media industry, but also to the CMDC and obviously the wider industry. This not only disrupts the lives of journalists and industry professionals like us, but also has far-reaching implications for communities that we serve and the audiences that marketers want to connect with. AI. It's in every single news headline. It not only dominates the headlines, but it also dominates the back end. So listen to this. AI chatbots fuel misinformation at scale. And we have a great partner called NewsGuard. I recommend everyone to look them up. Their mission is to combat misinformation. And they have this great research that shows that basically there's bots that are called content farms, and they populate they kind of house low quality websites, and they generate clickbait ad articles and headlines, obviously to drive advertising revenue for those sites. So this is where it gets a little bit frightening, is that they found 59 AI generated news sites. One of them in particular was just opened in February 2023, and it's anonymous, the owner, no one knows. So where's credibility? Where is integrity? The widespread use of AI in this matter, because AI can accelerate our learning, but in this matter, it raises really deep concerns about this dissemination of false information and the impact on public perception. It is up to us, that's why we're here today as leaders, to drive positive change. And without a vibrant, healthy media ecosystem, we all will face significant issues. And I just want to highlight some of the issues. This is going to create bigger problems. So well, first of all, there's a couple of pressing issues. One is lower voting turnout. So in the 2011 federal election, we actually hit a historical low of 61.4%, which is, to me, indicates disengaged citizens in terms of engaging in political issues and also the political process. Number two is it's also going to elevate the reliance on government spending and taxes. Number three is obviously it's going to rise misinformation and fact checking. So ensuring that we have access to verified sources of information. Number four would be corruption. Number five is sustainability. And I want to stick on this one because we did a leadership survey that we just launched last month in partnership with the Globe and Mail. And sustainability was number three on every marketer's agenda. And sustainability to us at CMDC is beyond environmental and social concerns. It also, we want to look at local media. So when you're thinking of your sustainability metrics or ESG programs, CMDC are now looking at new metrics, and Sarah Thompson, who's going to be joining us later, will maybe hopefully touch upon this because it hasn't launched yet. So maybe you'll get a sneak peek, but it's really important to us because we see ESG and sustainability as including local media and how you're serving your community and connecting with your Canadian audiences. And the last one is a little political, so I'm going to stay away from it, but the growing polarization. As we can see, it's pretty evident globally and especially to the South. Now, promoting inclusivity is essential to a healthier Canadian society. You're probably wondering, where does that take us as marketers and advertisers? Well, we at the CMDC, we recognize our leadership role in solving these challenges through intentional investment. A thriving, healthy Canadian ecosystem obviously has multiple benefits. It strengthens our economy, encourages responsible media, but also provides ample opportunities for marketers to engage with Canadian audiences. To me, and to us at the CMDC, and I hope for you, this is a win-win situation, not only for a healthy, vibrant Canadian media ecosystem, but also for Canada in general. Now, you're probably wondering, who is the CMDC? Who's backing this? We are a non-for-profit organization, and we represent media agencies across Canada. Our mission is to be trusted advisors for our clients and also for the broader media community to really drive this dynamic marketplace. Why is this important to you? Well, one is we really pride ourselves on our leadership and the leadership that we bring to the table in the industry. I said in terms of our leadership and growth, we look at economic growth of the industry, which is a tough conversation to have right now, obviously, with a looming possible recession in Q3. But I think it's important to look at our scale. So CMDC represents, it's actually 98% of media investment across Canada, which equates to $10 billion of investment. So with that, we do have the right leadership in place, and with our partners and stakeholders, it's important that we lean into big issues like this. Diversity of voices, we obviously ensure that we are being inclusive, and I don't think it's just inclusivity by nature, but it's inclusivity of voices and making sure that diversity of voices shines in journalism as well, and we're supporting that. And over a year ago, we had a great board discussion to look at, and Sarah will come on, but I remember having a conversation with you looking at the stats and the sudden, actually I shouldn't say sudden, the steady decline of local news. And as leaders, we sat back and said, we need to do something about it. So it's an industry-wide initiative to support local media, and our commitment is actually 25% of digital media spend for now that goes to Canadian publishers. That might seem small, but it's $380 million by 2025. Right now, we've already received over 1,500 pledges to date from leaders across media and marketers. And there's a lot more in store that I'm going to take you through in about 5 minutes, because I think I have 5 minutes left. So I'm going to show you our campaign that speaks volumes, and then I'll show you next steps and how you can get involved. Can we go to
The media landscape is more fragmented than ever, and that's pulling money out of our communities and away from our local media. But it's so much more than that. As more and more people turn to digital news, misinformation has become even more prevalent, and the role of local media even more vital. But there's another shift happening too. The loss of local media means Canadians have less access to the news they trust and rely on. Now they're relying on industry leaders to come together and provide a platform and voice for community news sources. As members of the CMDC, we represent 96% of Canada's total advertising investment. This means we have a critical role to play in helping Canadian media thrive. It starts by committing to change. It starts by committing to invest in Canadian media outlets. It starts when you take the pledge. Canadian Media Manifesto. Take the pledge.
So it's beyond just actually taking the pledge. I'm just going to share some of the print ads because I think the headlines speak volumes. I'd like to remind everyone of our goal. So in the context of policy, I'm not going to dive deep because we only have a little bit of time, but this is really our industry commitment. Now, our industry commitment is actually a bit greater than Bill C-18, but I have to say our objectives are the same. And the objective obviously is to support local media and Canadian journalism, even though the advertising trends are trending down. So the heart of the manifesto is the same as Bill C-18. And so we know that we're definitely on the right track. But again, this just shows the power of an industry and how we as leaders, if we come together, we really can make a difference. And we've done extensive research. Sarah is actually on my task force, and she will probably allude to this in our conversation. But with this extensive research, we actually looked at the steady decline of local news investment. Right today, we know that 19.5 digital media investment is going only to Canadian media, and we're kind of no pun intended, investing in research through our partnerships to further support this with case studies and reports. Dentsu's also done some great research around attention and trust and how they're actually closely linked. And according to the study, local news, newspapers, radio, and TV will all enjoy higher levels of trust and capture greater attention. If you want to dive deep into the research, I'm sure Sarah and Dentsu's team, and also she's done some great work with Tees, would be open to sharing that with you. And we also are going to have all of our reports on, we have a hub, sorry, and everything's online. So please dive into it. With that being said, Dentsu also looked at two important things. So this graph basically illustrates the advantages of advertising in highly trusted environments. So we look at it from a Canadian point of view and your civic duty and civic engagement, but also we look at it from a obviously marketer's point of view. So marketing in terms of trust, recall, brand recall, and the contribution to brand equity. Together, we can make changes. So we can actually move from efficiency to effectiveness. We can review investment and look at brand safety and suitability. We partner with NewsGuard, which all our members have access to. We can be more intentional with our investment. And we can, I know Torstar and Jordan Bidoff alluded to this, but it really looks at brand values. What is your core brand value as a brand? And then look at your ethical media supply chain. I kind of challenge all marketers to do that today. I'm going to skim over this just in the interest of time, but our roadmap is, I don't say success, I actually say it's progress. So this is not the end of our journey. We are just getting started. And what drives progress is educating and inspiring our community, really being leaders in the industry we just hosted a leadership summit. You'll meet Jeff from Village Media, who's joining later. And Sarah also is going to be joining, who were kind of instrumental to the local media debate. Partners, we also support startups. So we've met with a few fantastic Canadian startups. I do want to mention them. So Village Media, The Peak, and NewsGuard. We've done kind of alliances with them and really supported their startup nature. New metrics of success, which I'll touch upon soon, and measurement. So we can't do it alone. What's really important, as I talked about transparency and accountability, is we partner with measurement companies, SMI, to track our progress. So SMI are really the engine. So they're the technology engine that is going to measure our tracking of how much investment is actually going to local media. And what that looks like is we've created this task force, which 6 of our member media agencies sit on the task force. We definitely couldn't do it alone. I couldn't do it alone. So I have to say that we have a really dynamic task force, the minds and the energy behind our mission. And then from that, we've actually asked agencies to disclose their local media spend, which we just finished. So for the media agencies that are on the call right now, thank you so much. I know it was a lot of work. It wasn't easy, but everything is in. So I'm hoping that by the fall 2023, we will be able to share the metrics, and we'll be able to share how much we need to grow and how much we need to move the needle forward to reach our goal of 370 million by 2025. So again, it's more than just a pledge. It's about action. Media agencies, we can't do it alone. Marketers and CMOs are our partners. So we've actually reached, through our leadership report and also just testimonials and speaking to the marketing community, we have reached out to different marketers to talk about our mission, talk about the importance of investing in local media, not only from importance of the individual leadership, but also on the whole Canadian media ecosystem and the health of it. So we recognize that the task in hand is substantial, and we definitely cannot do it alone. So we need key stakeholders to be involved. So I am gonna do another call out to CMOs on the call. Please reach out to us, reach out to your agencies, and really champion local media investment. Our manifesto is not just a statement. We look at it as like a catalyst for action. So it's inspired so many powerful partnerships that are driving forward and driving momentum and positive change. I just want to highlight a few noteworthy partnerships. So one would be Group M and Torstar that just recognized or just did a deal recognizing the importance of investing in local. NewsGuard, we launched a partnership with them to ensure that we are creating brand safe environments. Teeds and Dentsu have some fantastic research on brand safety and also trust and attention. And these partnerships are just the beginning. So CMDC's manifesto is a catalyst for positive change. So it's supposed to be inspiring in order for you to actually create action at your agencies and beyond. Thank you. In closing, I definitely want to emphasize the importance of days like this and bringing leaders together and all key stakeholders in supporting our mission, in supporting local media and strengthening our Canadian media ecosystem. By collaborating and aligning our efforts, we can make a substantial impact and drive positive change. Let us all join forces and advocate for increased investment and champion this essential role of local media on our communities and also for our audiences. Through collective action together, we can ensure that local media thrives and continues to be the cornerstone of integrity and also driving a more informed, engaged Canadian society. I also really want to thank the National Post for bringing us all together, because it's these forums is where change happens. So thank you, National Post. Thank you, Bev, behind the scenes. Thank you, Andrew, for your continued leadership in making this happen and also uniting our industry. And thank you, Sabrina, for moderating it.
Thank you, Shannon. That was such a compelling and in so many ways, unfortunately, disturbing presentation. And all the research and data you were talking about, I've seen firsthand. You know, in my career, I've worked for not one, not two, but 3 local media outlets that no longer exist. And I've seen far too many journalists, and especially young journalists, leave the industry. So thank you for sharing all of that with us.
And I just remembered the journalist's name, Chris Nardi. Sorry, I have to say that because I felt so bad when I stopped. So Chris Nardi, thank you.
No problem. I know how it is. It always comes right after you finish up. Exactly. But with that, I'm going to introduce our very esteemed panel so we can also get their perspectives on the current media landscape and how important local media is going forward. We have with us Andrew McLeod, President and CEO of Postmedia, Jeff Elgie, CEO, Village Media, Michael Beckerman, Chief Client Officer, Torstar, Sarah Thompson, President of Dentsu, Sam Bavakwa, General Manager of La Presse, and Caroline Giannias, President of Radio Connects. Well, let's get right to it, because I know we could talk all afternoon about this, but we only have so much time. So Andrew, I'm going to pick on you first. What would you say to people who would say the need to support local media is a government responsibility rather than one of the media themselves or the buyers community?
Thank you. First of all, pleasure to be here. Where would I start? I think certainly it's to some extent a government responsibility, but I think more fundamentally, it's a societal issue. I think societies, certainly Western democracies, need to take a hard look at this question and reflect and understand on the reasons as to how we've arrived at this situation and what steps we want to take collectively to address it. I think Shannon spoke fairly eloquently on some of the challenges that we've seen in our societies over the last 15 years, which I think to some extent you can correlate to the rise of these global tech platforms. But I think it's well understood by everyone on the call. And I would say people in general, certainly in Western democracies, about the value that journalism brings in terms of holding power to account, in terms of informing its citizens. Trusted quality journalism is quite literally a part of the fabric of our societies and has been for hundreds of years. And I think not only journalism, but the points of dissemination, how it's shared and propagated, is equally important in terms of the trust that people get from the information. And, I spoke a moment ago about the rise in polarization. I think, I don't think you have to be a PhD to understand that there's a relationship between the dissemination platforms where people consume information and how they're architected. I mean, these are platforms that are designed by algorithms that appeal to our baser natures. We all have these elements in ourselves. And when you have systems that are designed and engineered to appeal to those baser natures, that has a number of negative consequences. And I think you could, spend a whole lot of time on a different panel talking about what those are. But for us, I think it's a fraying of the fabric of our societies and our democracies. I mean, look at the level of polarization that we're seeing, certainly in Western democracies. I think polarization isn't necessarily allowed in other political systems, so they don't have to worry about it as much, but certainly we do. And I think that's a lot of that is attributable to the environment that we find ourselves in. And just wait about the next US election cycle. They're already talking about deep fakes and AI-driven content and how that will be propagated across these algorithmically driven platforms. It's going to start to manifest itself in terms of some very real consequences. And I think people are starting to really wake up to the importance of this issue, not just in Canada, but around the world. And so I think the question is, how do we address it? How do we fix it? And whose problem is it? I think it's everyone's problem. I think it's something that's foundational and fundamental to our society. And I think, we have to step back and say, who's got the power to try to address some of these inequities? And I think government absolutely plays a role. And I think you're seeing that in Canada with Bill C-18. I spoke to some people in Ottawa this morning, and they tell me it's imminent. Its passage is imminent. So I've got my fingers crossed. I think courts around the world are looking at it with the dominance of, the anti-competitive nature of these platforms. Some would say duopolies. And I think the courts will play a role in unpacking that. And you're seeing that in the US, you're seeing that in Western Europe, and certainly Australia. But I think for the folks on this call, the CMOs, the buyers, the planners, the agencies, you guys play a foundational role in our ecosystem. And with you and your institutions, you have incredible power to address the playing field that's fundamentally unlevel. And I think that by engaging with you, by you understanding the power that you have relative to where you allocate your spend and the nature of that spend and what you align your advertising dollars against, the types of content, that will play an absolutely foundational role in really addressing what I think is going to be a foundational issue that's going to grow and grow in its importance. So I would just close with, let's work together to make positive change. I think there's a real opportunity to address this difficult environment that we find ourselves in. And with a little bit of work and positive engagement, we can get to a much better place. And that will pay dividends, not just for us in the near future, but for future generations. And for those of us that have kids on the call, I think that's critically important. So I'll close there, and thank you very much for the question.
Absolutely. Now, Jeff, as a relative newcomer in the publishing space, what approach has Village Media taken to break into this well-established area that's going through a tough time for all the reasons Andrew mentioned and more?
Thanks, Sabrina. I think Shannon references us as a startup. I think that's kind of funny. We've been around 10 years now, but I do still feel like a scrappy startup. I think the Montreal Gazette started almost 250 years ago. So in that context, like, we're just babies in this business. So for us, we spent a lot of time thinking about the communities that we want to operate in. So we'll survey them, we'll look at a number of different metrics, make sure that they're right for us and that we're needed. We spend a lot of time then finding audience. We do that through advertising with Google and Facebook, even as an example. We take out billboards, we launch newsletters, but then we also immerse ourselves in the communities. So we have a dedicated team called our CARES team. So they'll identify local events, nonprofits, charities that we can partner with as a new media organization to help make the community better, whether that be through sponsoring what they're doing, participating in events, or even launching awards programs or a random acts of kindness program. From there, it's really about getting the content mix right. Obviously, news and original local journalism is the focus, but we've learned that it takes a broad scope of news coverage to get it right. Basically something for everyone all throughout the day. And then beyond that, even other community content. That could be weather, could be webcams, could be obituaries, in some cases classifieds and more. It sounds like it's complex, but really it's the model of what a daily newspaper used to be in a healthy community where it had all those things. From there, our sales team has a really refined approach as to how we deploy what we call community-based marketing programs for local business. So it sounds simple, but over the years, we've got about an 88-step rollout guide to launch a new community, and a sales playbook that's about 100 pages long. So there's a lot to it, and there's still lots to learn.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Now, Michael, Postmedia and Torstar are two brands who have been around since the 19th century, and you've seen trends come and go. And for decades, brands wanted to get that Section A placement next to local news. But now we're seeing news brands often being blocked by trading desks. How do we address that omission issue from a brand safety perspective?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you very much. And first of all, I'll try to give you a fresh and original answer because Shannon and Andrew did such a good job in terms of covering some key themes and philosophies. And Jeff has bet me dinner I can't finish an answer within 3 minutes. So I've already started my clock as well on that. I do want to thank everybody that's attending. Like, it's a sunny day here in Toronto. You probably have 5 different conferences you could have attended today and a busy work schedule. That you would take the time for this important discussion, I think shows that you're both allies and you're intentional and purposeful in terms of your guardianship of your brands. And I really applaud you for carving out this time. So thank you very much for that. In terms of the question around kind of blacklists and keywords, I'll give you an anecdote because Shannon did such a great job in terms of covering some key themes. I was sitting across from a bank, I'll try not to mention their name, and they were underrepresented with Canadian media and underrepresented with Torstar. And the chief marketing officer and the head of advertising recognized that. And they started to use our words back at us. They talked about the ethical media supply chain and the importance of, in this case, a banking leader investing back in Canadian owned and operated news. What I loved about it was they recognized that we're not a charity, is that we can provide high value, performance oriented audiences. But what was prohibiting them for reaching meaningful spend levels were the blacklists and the keywords. And before I started my song and dance, the head of advertising did it for me. And she spoke about that why on earth would we take out news organizations that provide a halo effect to their brand that is 2 times greater than when they appear in social media, right? Within the Canadian owned and operated media, each click is a human click. You know the source of the news compared to when you're lock and load and sleeping on it programmatic. You're not sure where those dollars are going and where they're going to go to be supporting. And so what was exciting to me was, and they had a funny little exchange. They go, well, we don't want to have an ad right beside a COVID article. And then a saner person in the room said, of course we do. That's going to be an article about public health, right? And so that's exactly where an appropriate ad adjacency would be for a bank or a telco or what have you. So we're spending a lot of time debasing the mythology. We're asking more people to be informed and purposeful, to seek out Canadian-owned and operated sites because you're going to enjoy a halo effect in terms of integrity and trustworthiness when your ad is in the Toronto Star app or in the National Post app. So that's how we're going about it. So I challenge the people from the agencies and client side, be intentional, be purposeful. You're going to miss out in quality brand guardianship if you get too lazy on blacklists and keywords from a programmatic side. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike, and congratulations. I think you won your bet. Sarah, I'm very curious, how should publishers work with agencies and media planners and clients when it comes to expressing the value of engagement versus a passive click?
Well, I think there's a lot to unpack within that, because measurement alone, we've kind of been told how to measure the success of media and advertising campaigns by a lot of platforms. Rightfully or wrongly, they have trained and tooled us for the last decade. It's time for us to take a harder look on what is actually driving value for a business outcome. We've been over reliant on just click as an indicator of something is happening versus realizing that publishers, news outlets actually have higher dwell time, more attention, and more trust. And that's not just true of our newspaper and news organizations, but it's also true of radio stations. It's true of local out-of-home, that the media mix that we are evaluating, if we're just chasing fast-moving metrics at any given time, that doesn't actually tell you whether the plane is taking off or the plane is landing. We need to reassess what is foundationally important to drive a business outcome for our clients and what actually elevates their brand. Attention is one of those metrics that we've studied quite extensively, and you saw a little bit of that from what Shannon alluded to. Attention is important because if your ad is not actually spent any time on, be it peripheral or actually, dedicated attention, what's the point? Because you're just having somebody click on something that doesn't necessarily tell you that they're actually digesting your message, understanding what you're trying to say. So we need to hit a really hard reset on the measurement and analytics that we have attached to our media plans and media strategies, so that we have higher quality media at the forefront of our media strategies and plans. And at the end of the day, we are all just stewards of our clients' investment. I kind of look at it as this way. We can either decide that as an industry of media leaders, we want to be robo-advisors and we just want to take briefs and transact on those briefs, and that's fine. But in truth, I want to be a high net worth advisor. The client is coming to us with tens of millions of dollars and asking us to drive business and brand outcomes. That comes with a lot of reverence and a lot of professionalism that we need to imbue back into our media organization so that we're actually delivering on business outcomes and tangibly proving them. And as we continue to measure media and local media in Canada, what we're finding is that these partners that you see today, and a whole bunch of others from APTN to our local broadcasters that aren't present here today either, they all contribute to a business outcome. And the way you were framing it within the media plan, I remember having a conversation with Christine Saunders on stage about last year from Starcom, and we both said if we were just as critical of broadcasts and other plans as we are of pennies being moved in a strategy or looking at the holistic media plan, imagine how more transformative our industry would be. My ask, and this is the same thing that I say to clients, is it's time to reassess. It's time to take a really hard look at your ESG initiatives, what you were trying to accomplish, because if it's attached to sustainability, if it's attached to DE&I, if it's attached to anything about good governance, all of that is connected to the local media environment in Canada. And that to me is the most important metric of all. So when we talk about an ethical media supply chain, it is not just because we're thinking about it as a non-for-profit. Both Andrew and Jeff very concertedly said it actually, they want to drive a business outcome. It's that it's good for our society, and we want more pro-social behaviors in our country, including voting. It's also really good for business because people will actually see the ad.
Definitely. Thanks, Sarah. I love how you connected all of those dots together. Caroline, in a related question, what do you think surprises advertisers the most about the difference between traditional media and social media?
Thanks, Sabrina. I don't know that it's so much about people being surprised. I think it's a reality in this crazy media landscape we all work in is that I think people have forgotten, what the intrinsic value of what, people refer to as legacy media because it's not, digital or connected to a device, when in actual fact, all media today in Canada that's available is connected to a device and is available on demand anywhere at any time, regardless if you're a radio station in Abbotsford or you're a local TV station in Ottawa. I don't think it's really a matter of what's surprising. Again, as I said, I think it's about remembering that media in Canada, the television, radio, the scale and the reach of that media more so than any other digital platform. I mean, I think people probably would be surprised to know that if you look at the reach of radio across any key demographic in an average, 7-day period, has more reach than any social media platform. It outperforms TikTok, it outperforms YouTube, it outperforms any digital platform in terms of its ability to reach Canadians. So I think, really does, as Sarah was saying, it does require us to step back and look at the holistic media space. What is the role that each medium is playing in that communication plan? Because if everything is focused towards a digital, yes, it does have a place, but it's not the only media that serves the different need states of Canadians. So I think it's really important to it's more about rediscovering, I think, what the value of media like radio, because I'll obviously speak to radio, can deliver. But I also just want to take a step back too and just, focus on local media. Is media outside of the top 5 markets in Canada. I mean, Canada is a very large country of 6 time zones. We're not a homogenous country when it comes to media consumption or just behaviors in general. And so I think, when CMOs are looking at the value of reaching Canadian consumers, the Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Edmonton, that's 50% of Canada. What about the rest of the country? From coast to coast that are served so effectively by local media that when you're just executing a national plan, you're not necessarily reporting effectively in Calgary that you are in Edmonton. They're 2 very different markets. They don't consume media, don't spend media at the same time. So I think it's really important when you're looking at putting together a communication plan and looking at local media is just recognizing that Canada is a very big country with different behaviors. And that if you are looking at local media, you have to look at each individual market and say, well, what's the role of my media plan to move my client's business forward? So, what's surprising about legacy media is that our reach, our trust, our connection with consumers, regardless of how it's consumed or on what device it's consumed, it can outperform any digital medium out there.
Sarah, did you have something to add?
I just think it's an important reminder that Carolyn is hitting on here is that often we're not looking at the absence of information. And we know that we are poorly measured as a country when it comes to media consumption. You can over-index on any panel and you're still not getting the true representation. And if you think about 1.5 million new Canadians coming to our country, which are coming from nations around the world, they're not all going to live in those 5 cities. So where are they going to live? How are you going to get to know them? I challenge every single planner who is on this call and every single person who is reviewing a media strategy to ask, what is the opportunity that we're missing and where didn't we look? Because I think to Carolyn's point, we've forgotten, we're leaning back in, but you also have to question the data sets that you're looking at because often it's absent from there as well. And we don't see things that aren't present. So you have to challenge what you're looking at when you're planning.
Mm-hmm. Sam, speaking of reach, the question is always, how do you quantify that? How do you prove it? So what are some of the latest performance measurement tools publishers are using to measure campaign success?
Thanks for that question. Listen, I think that, everybody's doing a great job covering a lot of the subjects. And, I think one of the main things that Sarah hit on is really reevaluating what success looks like. I think as a Canadian publisher, we need to work very closely with our advertising partners and move from a vendor relationship to a partner relationship and really have those discussions to kind of understand what success actually looks like. That being said, we have all of the standard metrics in place. We have all of the tools in place, GAM, DV360, all the dashboards that you need and want, your DSP of choice. All of those metrics are available to you should you use us programmatically. It's really about kind of like, what are we doing? We are, as publishers, spending a lot of time, money, and energy on our sites, our site design, not only from a UX standpoint, not only from a user standpoint, but from a advertiser standpoint, in order to make sure that we meet and exceed all of the metrics that are out there, viewability, et cetera. So anything that we would see in the marketplace, we strive to be above that. And this is something that we continue to do. Another area where we're investing, and this is where I think we can really work really closely with our advertising partners, is on our audiences. We're investing in our audiences. At La Presse, we have a CDP in place, a customer data platform. We've had it for a number of years, and we do this twofold. We do this to understand what our readers and what our users are doing, where they're going, what news information are they consuming, and how do we continue to have that conversation with them. But then we also use that information to see what is hitting home from an advertising standpoint. So when we look at that, we actually get to see what value we bring to the table. And then when we start to look at these things outside of the standard metrics, that's where partnership is multiplied tenfold. We have the ability to kind of sit down right at the outset with an advertiser or a partner and an agency and talk about, how do we work together to make this a successful campaign? What does that look like from the outset? Because we have a lot of tools at our disposal. We have a lot of platforms, a lot of different products that can work. We just need to know, what does that look like at the back end in order for us to recommend it at the beginning? Because sometimes we're measured just on a click, as Sarah was saying. Well, that's not telling the whole story. There's the engagement piece, there's the viewability piece. There's so many other pieces of the pie that are not being considered when we just look at that last click. So for us, it really is, an opportunity not only during the campaign to shine, but also post-campaign. We can work with you hand in hand, where some of the big platforms maybe don't do that, and provide you with post analytics, brand lift studies, things of that nature, where we can actually put our best foot forward and say, this worked really well and here's why. And we can help paint that story and tell that story back to your advertiser in order to ensure that they see where those success metrics are.
Thanks for breaking that down. That made a lot of sense. Mike, I'm curious where you see local media going from here. Does the industry continue swimming upstream? Is there a trend reversal? And if so, what are the indicators you'd be looking for on that? Yeah,
great question. I think that we're having this discussion. I'll give us a 6 out of 10. The quality of discussion's a 10 out of 10. The measure of the success of this workshop is going to be what happens over the next 90 days. And the same thing with this next workshop that we're doing 2 weeks from now. I think about velocity. I don't think that we're moving fast enough. I think about initiative. I think there's too few of us that feel that this is our responsibility. And to Andrew's point, this is a national issue. And I think about accountability as well. So velocity, initiative, accountability, I think this could be one of the greatest times in a media planner's career. Like, what an opportunity to make a difference for your brand and, quite frankly, for your country. And again, we're not a charity. This is an opportunity to redefine performance metrics and associate your brand with integrity and trustworthiness, right? This is right up there with climate and diversity. So what an amazing time to be in media. You can redefine your career, yet I think there's too much lip service and not enough action, quite frankly, and there's too few voices out there right now. So I'm tremendously optimistic because of leaderships and panels like this, and I'm sober and realistic as well. I met with another CMO at a telco last week, and I got some similar things that Shannon was speaking about, and their initial reaction was, that's your problem, not my problem. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you are one of the most influential chief marketing officers in the country. And we got there, but it took way too long. And so for people to open up their minds and open up their hearts and recognize this is a critical time within our country's history, but what a tremendous opportunity it is. I think the next 6 or 8 months are going to be critically important. And so I just ask people to think about velocity. I think about taking initiative, develop direct relationships, and I think about personal accountability.
Thanks, Mike. And what you were talking about, how this isn't a charity, there's real value here, really hit a mark for me. So Andrew, I'd like to ask you, many of your brands and brands of others on this panel are deeply embedded in local communities. Can you tell me how those local connections help deliver results for advertisers?
Absolutely. I mean, I would look at it through two lenses. One is our industry has done a really amazing job over the last, call it 5-7 years, reinventing our infrastructure. So we've got amazing first-party data, deep insights into our audiences, and we can correlate that down to a very local level. So I think we've done an incredible job delivering what I would call table stakes, or the status quo that advertisers are looking for in terms of understanding outcomes and reach and who we're actually disseminating information to. So we've ticked that box, and it's an ongoing journey for us. But I think perhaps more fundamentally, when you look at the brands that we represent, when I say we, I mean the industry. We quite literally are woven into the fabric of these communities. And in many cases, they've been around, in some cases, centuries. And they personify trust. They personify safety, integrity. And as I mentioned, they're quite literally a part of the fabric of the communities they represent. And they have enormous goodwill. So I think everyone on this call understands the relationship between the medium and the message. And I think 5, 7, 10 years ago, people were looking at the tech platforms as this angelic force for good around the world. And I think that's changed pretty significantly in the last few years. And I think people are now waking up and reminding themselves of the value of these platforms. And, just last night, I was speaking with our team in Calgary, and there was an election in Alberta, as many people likely know. And the traffic that was coming to our sites in Alberta was quite literally off the charts. And so we don't have an issue relative to aggregating audience or understanding audience. We have an issue monetizing the audience. And that's largely because we have these platforms between us and the ability to monetize, and that needs to change. So I think the message is very simple. We've got a lot of the data and information that advertisers are looking for, but more importantly, the mediums that we represent are trusted, they're full of integrity, they're safe, and they represent the fabric of the nation. So I think both together make them an outstanding place to allocate your advertising dollars.
Thanks, Andrew. And with that, I'm going to jump into some audience Q&As. So I want to make sure we get them in. We only have a few minutes left. Our first one is, how are agency owners leading their teams to dive deep and evaluate and examine all available mediums in a deadline-driven and time-crunched industry? And also, how specifically are agency owners guiding clients in their decision-making? Does someone want to jump in here?
I will take that one, because just speaking on behalf of the CMDC and also on behalf of Dentsu, I think that there's still a lot of hard work that we need to do in this space. I think much like what Mike was talking about, we need our industry leaders that are running our agencies to do and hold conversations like this, ensure that they have active participation of their staff, to retrain and retool, to start educating their staff and start making it an opportunity to talk about what is Canada today, because it is not the country that we think that it is. And also start having those conversations around clients about responsible media and advertising and what their dollars actually are doing and affecting change, and hit the hard reset on analytics and measurement of how are you measuring your brand? Is it something that has existed for 15 years or is it up to date? How are you evaluating to a business outcome? And are you arming your media agencies with that data so they can tangibly prove that effect? And the final one is just start talking about it within your halls. I think that if we continue to talk about it and it becomes a talk track, people start to get motivated. And I take a great deal of responsibility in my power in the industry and my representation in Dentsu, because I have influence, and every single leader of a media agency has some level of influence to start changing how your planning product is actually produced and what actually is a business benefit to our clients. Our clients are clamoring for it. And this isn't a competitive issue. This is an industry issue. This is something that if everybody pulls up their bootstraps and starts focusing on this, this is just better for all of us as an industry, which is why the CMDC is behind it as well. I want our clients' campaigns to perform. Here are partners where our campaigns perform. We need to get them back in our plans.
Another audience question that I think is a nice follow-up to what Andrew was talking about is, can we get some actual examples of local campaigns that were successful? Maybe Sam, you could take this one.
Sure. I mean, for me, I think there's a number of them. I mean, speaking from the Quebec point of view, it is very difficult to really land in Quebec the right way and know exactly how to communicate with the Quebec audience. We make it easy. We have been around since 1884. We've been around a long time, so we know our audience. And for us, it's really instrumental to help build those programs out from the ground up, especially in Quebec, because there is a cultural difference, there is a language difference. Even just hitting the Google Translate from English to French is not going to do it, because you need to have Quebecois in that as well. So for us, one of the examples is we did a launch with the VW towels 2 years ago. When they came to market, they wanted to land in Quebec in a very different way. And so we had that seat at the table that I was talking about earlier. And we basically pulled together a program with a combination of creative executions. We helped to cast videos, we helped to produce videos, and we basically pulled together a program that was called Je te passe the clé, which is basically, I'll pass you my keys. Sorry if I butchered the French, I apologize, but, and it's basically pulling together people within the community itself. So using that local voice, using that local on the ground knowledge to really connect with that audience. And the premise of this was really to have influencers in Montreal, in Quebec City, all over the province to connect. So we gave them the opportunity to have drive the towels and pass the key to the next person, where the towels was basically the hero of the whole program. And by us having that opportunity to share that knowledge with not only our friends at Touche, who was a great help, we actually sat with the client and said, look, what are your success? What does success look like for you? How do we measure that success? They explained it to us, and we helped build that from the ground up. This for us was one of the key components in order for us to make sure that not only are we delivering, we're delivering in a way that hits the local marketplace and exceeds all of the KPIs that were put in front of us. So that's just one of many examples I can give you.
Sarah, I see you have your hand up, so I'll give you the chance to have the final word.
We embarked on a study with TEEDS because it's really important for us to bake into all of our service level agreements some level of research study that benefits the actual industry. We're happy to give it away, but the study shows that local news and even local sports actually has higher dwell time and more benefits to two critical industries. One is alcohol, the other one is CPG, which are two big investors in our Canadian market. But it also benefits all other industries as well. It just depends on what category you're in. So if anybody wants that study, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can find my email address. You can contact Shannon. I will give it away. You can have it. If it helps you prove your point to a client or reinforce something that you need to show in a plan, we will give it to you.
Thanks, Sarah. And Caroline, did you want to weigh in quickly?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Just very quickly, obviously, we all know what's happening on the east coast of Canada right now with fires approaching in on Halifax. You'll never know how much you need local media until you're being told to evacuate your home or what roads are closed. And, to all of the advertising community out there, without that investment in local media, without that trust in local media, those stations, those papers won't be there. And I can guarantee you Google and Facebook are not going to be showing you emergency exits to find, how to get out of your town safely and how to get your pets home safely. So, if we have a responsibility to one another across the country, that responsibility from an advertising perspective is to support our local media, which supports our local community, which it benefits everyone, everywhere.
Thank you, Caroline. That's such a powerful example and perfect way to wrap up this conversation because we're at 2:30. So I want to thank our audience first and foremost for tuning in today, and a quick reminder to keep an eye on your inbox for the Canadian Media Matters survey and your chance to win $500. I would also like to thank all of our panelists, such amazing insights. Caroline, Jeff, Mike, Sarah, Sam, Andrew, thank you again. And another thank you to Postmedia for organizing today's chat. And one last thank you, lots of thank yous to go around here, to today's partners, Torstar, La Presse, Village Media, Radio Connects, Canadian Directors Media Council, Global Media, News Media Canada, Quebecor, Dentsu, Postmedia. And for everyone at home, please remember to support Canadian media, local media, subscribe, and advertise. Thank you, everyone, and have a great afternoon.